am not for the take, first of all, which is why I find it, a compliment that none of these people, Jim Leonard and none of these people would ever call me. People have tried, not them, to get me to put certain narratives out. Margaret's tried before too, but like behind the velvet rope is not for the take. Where there's no narrative. The narrative is what David observes that week, and it changes every week. But I agree, sometimes I think being a lawyer, when people slip in and ask me innocent questions, I'm like, I think, but I don't know the bigger picture. And by the way, also, I want to say, before everyone says that, like, why are we talking about Vanessa? That's such a thing of the past. It's not. I mean, Margaret was just on Jeff Lewis. This just came up last week with Margaret, or 2 weeks ago. She was on Jeff Lewis and Jeff brought it up. And then Vanessa's lawyer, Doug Anton, just made a statement again. So this is still going on. For everyone who's going to say, like, why are we still talking about this? It was from the past. It's
Yeah,
not.
well,
It just came out again.
and it's going to be very much current because Teresa's on she's on all these platforms, Entertainment Tonight. She's talking with Tori Spelling. She's all over the place doing press, and she keeps telling everyone the same thing. Oh, something big's going to come out. Something big's coming out. And what she's referring to is when we see the scene, which we will towards the end of the season, or maybe they'll stick it in the middle. I don't know. But what she keeps referring to is that the world will find out that, yes, in fact, Vanessa was talking to Margaret Josephs and Joe Gorgon. It was admitted on the stand during this most recent trial against Vanessa in regards to Louis. So that's like their big bombshell. So for people who are like, why are we talking about Vanessa? Because it's very relevant, guys. Yes, that press release just came out, but Teresa's all over the place teasing the fact that we're going to find this tea that we're talking about now. And it's so funny to me that she's going to make that like the moment to like vindicate Louis that, yes, in fact, Marge and Joe were talking to her. It's like, number one, if you have a family member who's dating someone and you're starting to see like and hear all these stories about that guy, like, I know Joe Gorga and Teresa have had a rocky relationship, but don't you think like deep inside he's a little concerned when he hears the ex saying, hey, he did this to me, he put the other one through this? Like, as a human being, you will naturally be concerned. So I really do not think it's a bombshell that Joe Gorga talked to her, because who wouldn't? A concerned family member. I know they've had a rocky past, but I mean, I would want to know if my sister was dating someone shady. And then, like, in regards to Margaret, who gives a damn? Like, and they're like, the timeline doesn't make sense. That really big blogger, she just posted about how Margaret's timeline doesn't make sense. It's like, throw the fucking timeline out the window. Who gives a shit about the timeline? You guys were talking to Laura, number one. This guy was over here bashing her. Like, there's a bazillion reasons as to why I will personally justify Margaret talking to Vanessa. But the bigger picture, what everyone is forgetting here is that this man is a red flag. This man has a past. Those things are not lies. So, I mean, I know they're going to be like, Margaret's not going to be really concerned for Teresa. She hates her. But guess what? Margaret is going to be concerned who's in her house. And Louis's been to her house. And wouldn't you want to know, David, who's coming into your house? So, I mean, there's many reasons why I justify these people talking to his ex. But some people are too small-minded to realize why.
And so, like, that is like this thing, because yes, Teresa does keep doing these interviews. She's like, you have to watch and see. She tells Billy Bush and everyone, like, that's this big thing. Like, we're gonna find out later in the season that, which, first of all, isn't it already known that Margaret's? And again, there's no horse in this race for me. I got issues with all these people on the damn
Yeah.
RHONJ, except for Jackie, pretty much. But just as a human being, Jackie and I have had wonderful exchanges, and I've never spoken to Cabral or Fuda, so I'm not including them. But
Yeah.
like, we already know Margaret is speaking to Vanessa. Like, that was 2 seasons. Like, that's all over social media already. The pictures and this and that.
Yeah.
But I mean, so that is now going to be on the TV. Like, that's this big spoiler that Teresa, like, we're going to find out she's been speaking to Vanessa.
Yeah.
That's
So
this big thing.
the big thing she keeps like fluffing is that so we're going to see a scene where Jim Leonard, again, you guys, I know we're going to get into Jim Leonard, but he very much is a big part of this season for many reasons. Not only was he orchestrating storylines behind the scenes
And that's
to stick
Teresa's
them on social.
attorney, just for
Yeah.
people who don't know. Go on.
Yes. So not only was he orchestrating storylines behind the scenes on social media so it can make its way onto the show so Teresa could have a storyline, but he was also, I mean, and don't be surprised if we see him in confessionals, which is like the only RHONJ lawyer that has ever had confessionals. It's weird. We're going to see a scene when they're at Teresa's house, and Teresa's lawyer, Jim Leonard, is going to tell the girls it was admitted on the stand that Vanessa Reiser was talking to Joe Gorga and Margaret Josephs. And then Teresa is going to get all emotional. She talks about her family and they throw Vanessa under the bus and whatnot. So the scene Teresa keeps teasing in all her like little interviews is that scene. And really, like, Teresa
Interesting.
and Louis are convinced that that scene is going to make everybody love Louis and view him as a victim, because it's like their so-called aha scene where we caught you, Margaret. But I mean, it was no secret that Margaret had talked to her. I love that Margaret's owning it. But again, I mean, if I'm gonna work with you, if I'm gonna film with you, if you're gonna come into my like vicinity, I want to know who you are. So of course I'm gonna talk to that ex. And another thing, like, here is a man who told the whole cast on national television that he hired a private investigator and he had folders on everybody. So, I mean, all is fair game, I say.
Yes. And what about people who say, because, the other, we've seen these things and all this, the other side. What about the people who say, well, Vanessa's the crazy stalker? You know what I mean? Like that, because we've seen that argument, right? That, it was in court and it was ruled that, the restraining order should be against her, all of that stuff. Like, what do you say to that?
I say that she had plenty of reason to keep an eye on someone who threatened her the way he did, because she was fearful of what he could do. I mean, her tires were slashed. There's a violent history there. I say she had to keep her eye on him because you don't know what someone like that is capable of. And for her security and for her own peace of mind, it was always, I guess, in her best interest to see where his, where he was walking, what he was doing, because she felt fearful. She had to keep an eye on him because he had threatened her so much to the point where she was living in fear. And wouldn't you want to know the person who threatened you, like their doings? I mean, I don't think she ever wanted to be like surprised by what he could be doing. I mean, they literally slashed the girl's tires. I mean, I know personally in dealing with Louis how like out there he can be, how crazy he can be, and how scary he can be. I could only imagine like what Vanessa was going through all these years. And believe me, I was a fan. I was on their side. I was calling Vanessa the stalker. I was saying she was the weirdo, this and that. I I now see it clear, and I do not blame this girl for protecting herself or doing what she has to do, because she was a victim. And unfortunately, Teresa and her camp have tried to flip the script on her.
What's like the most egregious, like when they asked you, and like who was it? Like, I mean, did you get mostly text calls? Like, how often was this? Like, how often? And was it just Teresa? So to her lawyer, Jim Leonard, like we just for
Teresa,
everyone.
Teresa and I were texting every day. We were calling each other, talking to each other. I mean, there was times where we would go without talking like a day or so, but we were constantly on the phone talking. We talked about absolutely everything from sex to the show. Like, we talked about it all. There was nothing off limits. There was some things that came through text, but most of like the deep stuff was over the phone. And she would call me, she'd be like, hold on, let me get Jim on. And she would get him. So, especially in regards to Vanessa and the trial, a